If you're like me, you've spent hours turning your compost pile, sweating in the sun, and hoping that one day it will transform into that rich, earthy soil you dream about. Today, I want to share something that completely changed the way I compost, and you're going to want to try it. But before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell and leave a comment about your composting experiences. I love hearing from fellow gardeners because we're all constantly learning and experimenting. For years, I turned my compost religiously, thinking it was the only way to speed up decomposition. But I noticed that despite all my effort, some materials would break down faster than others, and the pile would sometimes emit unpleasant odors if I missed a day or two. That's when I discovered an alternative method that doesn't require nearly as much work, and it accelerates the breakdown process dramatically. The secret? Layering specific amendments into your compost and letting natural processes do most of the work. I realized that turning isn't always necessary if you feed your compost the right ingredients. Turning is traditionally recommended to aerate the pile and speed up decomposition. But I noticed that constant turning was disturbing the microbial communities I wanted to thrive. By leaving the pile largely undisturbed, I allowed fungi, bacteria, and earthworms to establish themselves naturally. These organisms are far more effective at breaking down tough materials like woody stems and cardboard than you or I could be with a pitchfork. The key is feeding them correctly. I started by adding a mix of high nitrogen amendments that I didn't normally include, such as fresh grass clippings, kitchen scraps, and especially coffee grounds. These materials give microbes the energy they need to multiply quickly. I aim for roughly a 1:3 ratio by volume, 1 part nitrogen-rich material to 3 parts carbon-rich material like dry leaves, straw, or shredded cardboard. Too much nitrogen can cause odor, while too little slows decomposition. Adding something acidic changed everything in the compost pile. One unexpected addition that really transformed my compost was, well, just a light dusting of powdered rock phosphate, or sometimes a handful of garden lime, depending on what materials I had in my pile. Acidic materials like coffee grounds naturally lower pH a bit, which, some microbes absolutely love. But balancing it all out with mineral amendments helps maintain a stable environment for all the organisms. Once I started adding these minerals, I noticed the pile heating up faster and staying active for much longer, even without turning. The heat in your compost pile is crucial because, honestly, it accelerates the chemical breakdown of materials. Ideally, the internal temperature should reach around 130 to 150 degrees Fahrenheit for a few days. This isn't just about speed, it's about pathogen control, making sure that seeds and bacteria in your compost don't end up in your garden. By layering nitrogen-rich greens and mineral amendments in thin layers between carbon-heavy browns, you create these natural hotspots that stay warm and active. Once I stopped turning the compost, I realized just how much energy I was wasting. Instead of physically turning the pile, I started focusing on layering and hydration. Every time I added kitchen scraps or garden waste, I covered it immediately with dry leaves, shredded paper, or straw. This keeps the pile balanced and prevents odors while allowing microbes to colonize in their own rhythm. Moisture is another factor that makes a huge difference. I aim for the consistency of a wrung-out sponge. Too dry and microbes slow down. Too wet and anaerobic bacteria take over, creating smells. Watering with a hose or sprinkling a bucket of water during dry spells keeps the pile active without manual turning. One of the biggest advantages of leaving the pile alone is that you start noticing subtle changes in texture, smell, and temperature. Darkening at the edges, a sweet, earthy smell, and a slight settling are all signs of healthy decomposition. I also started layering worm-friendly materials like fruit peels or soft greens near the top, which invited earthworms to move through the pile, aerating and mixing naturally. Over time, The worms do what I used to do with a pitchfork, but more efficiently. The result was astonishing. Materials that previously took months to break down, like cardboard cores from paper towels and woody stems, were decomposing in half the time. By combining high nitrogen materials, mineral amendments, careful moisture management, and minimal disturbance, I had a compost pile that essentially took care of itself. Start with a base of carbon-heavy browns, about 3 times the volume of greens. Layer in nitrogen-rich materials, coffee grounds or fresh grass clippings, then sprinkle lightly with powdered rock phosphate or lime. Water lightly if necessary, cover the layers with more browns, and leave the pile undisturbed. Repeat every few days with fresh materials, layering instead of mixing. Observe the pile and let microbes and worms do the work naturally. The difference is clear not just in speed, but in quality. The final compost is dark, crumbly, and full of life, perfect for enriching garden beds, pots, or even seed-starting mixes. By stepping back and using the right additions, your compost can break down twice as fast as if you were turning it constantly. If you found this guide helpful, don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more practical, no-nonsense gardening tips. Share your composting experiments in the comments below. I'd love to hear how these methods work in your garden. Together, we can make gardening easier, faster, and more productive, while respecting the natural processes that make soil so powerful.